Hi, and welcome to Run Tall with Tim, the YouTube channel that's dedicated to all runners everywhere. I'm Tim, and I upload new running videos every single week. If you're new to the channel, I try to get new videos out on both Wednesday and Saturday mornings, and that's at 5 a.m. Standard Eastern Time here in the US. If you want to save yourself a little time, if you open the description, you'll see that I've created some chapters. All you have to do is click on a timestamp for the part of the video that you want to watch, and it's going to take you right there. On today's episode, I'm comparing two brand new carbon-plated racing shoes from Hoka, their Rocket X versus their Carbon X2. Now, there's some similarities in these shoes, but there's also a whole lot of differences, so we got a lot to talk about. Before we get to that, let me just demonstrate what it looks like to run in both of these shoes. Now, I'm going to run in the Rocket X first, followed by the Carbon X2. After that, we'll come back together, we'll do the comparison so that you can decide which shoe might be right for you. Okay, so let's take a look at these two shoes. They both cost $180 US. So in terms of price differential, they cost exactly the same. And that's not too bad for a carbon-plated racing shoe today. Still a lot of money, but in terms of racing shoes, it's not terrible. Let's look at the weight of the shoes. Now there's a big difference here. The Rocket X comes in at 7.4 ounces for a men's size 9 on my scales, or 210 grams. Now the Carbon X2 is a little bit heavier. It weighs an ounce more than the Rocket X. It came in at 8.5 ounces or 240 grams. And again, that's a men's size 9 on my scales. Let's take a look at the uppers on these two shoes. Now they're very similar in a lot of ways. They both have an engineered mesh upper. And we'll take a look at the Rocket X first. As we zoom in, we can see that it has kind of an honeycomb style of perforations that creates that airflow in your forefoot through your midfoot area. And it's very lightweight. It's breathable. It feels really comfortable underfoot. I think it is a little bit narrow, but that's that's right up Hoka's wheelhouse, I guess. A lot of their shoes tend to run a little bit narrow in that forefoot, at least in my opinion anyway. And as we work our way around to the side of the shoe, you can see that they have their Hoka logo there as a plastic overlay. And they also have a little bit of plastic overlay in that heel counter to give it a little stability. Now, if we turn and we look at the Rocket X, we can see not only is the colorway very similar, for my shoes anyway, the material itself is also that mono-engineered, mesh, breathable, lightweight upper that we saw there in the Rocket X. Now, the pattern of those perforations is more of a triangle style, but I didn't feel like there was much difference in terms of airflow between the two shoes. They both felt really comfortable that way. If we pan around to the side of the shoe, looks pretty much the same. It has the Hoka logo there on the side as a plastic overlay, and they also have a little bit of plastic overlay in that heel counter, just like the Rocket X does. So I think the uppers are pretty similar in terms of the material that they use and the breathability. Where they do differ is in the forefoot area of the shoe. I feel like there's a little bit more room in the toe box of the Carbon X2 than there is in the Rocket X. So if you've got a bit of a wider foot and you've struggled maybe with the narrowness of some of the Hoka shoes, you might find this one to be a little more suitable for you. So now let's take a look at the eyelet chain on these two shoes. It's pretty much the same. There really isn't much difference here, and they're adequate. They do the job. Both have a similar quality in that you kind of have to cinch that material together pretty closely to get a lockdown feeling across the midfoot. But in terms of design, they both have plastic overlays to give it a little bit of structure and stability or durability. And also they have some plastic overlay in that inside cage area of both of these shoes. So no real issues with that. I just wish that I didn't have to cinch the material quite so close together to get the lockdown feeling that I enjoy having in both of these shoes. So they're similar in that way. I just wish that they were both a little bit different there. If we look at the tongue of the shoes, again, very similar. They're both gusseted. Love that. They don't, the tongues don't move around. They don't migrate. There is a little bit different material in the Carbon X2. It has more of a leathery material on the inside of the tongue area, and it also has a notch there. So presumably to allow it to lay a little more flat on your foot and to give you a little bit more of a custom feeling so that it just lays flat. And sits nicely there to add a little bit of comfort to the shoe. But frankly, I didn't have my experience in the Rocket X has been very comfortable and enjoyable. I haven't had any issues with the tongue of that shoe. So while it's different, I don't know that it's necessarily an improvement over and above what the Rocket X is. I think they both do a good job. As we look at the padding around the heel, collar and the tab of these shoes, there's a big difference here. The amount of padding in the Carbon X2, there just feels like there's a little bit more there. And also they have that anatomically correct heel flare or tab of the shoe. And that's really comfortable. And that's quite a bit different than what you see in the Rocket X. But again, the Carbon X2 does weigh a little bit more. And this is part of the reason why. They just have a little bit more comfort built into the shoe, and we can see it here in the tab. Now, let's look at the heel counter, and let's start with the Rocket X. For a lightweight shoe, they have a ton of structure here, far more than I expected there to be. When I give it the pinch test, it's hard to even pinch it together. There's that much structure there, which I enjoy. It adds some stability to that heel counter area. Now, likewise, as we pan over and we look at the Rocket X, they too have some extra material. They have built up pretty well on that heel counter area. Also gives you some stability, but I think the Rocket X has a little bit more than the Carbon X2 does. Nonetheless, I still felt it was really comfortable and I could put a lot of miles on it. I like that added stability in both of the shoes and heel counter area for racing shoes. A lot of times racing shoes don't have any stability built in or extra structure built into the heel counter, and both of these do. And I felt that they both did, a really nice job and keeping me comfortable when I was out running. So let's take a look at the midsole on these shoes, or the engine of the shoes, as I often like to call it. And we'll start with the Rocket X first. Now they have their compression EVA-based midsole foam here. It's really soft, very responsive, very smooth through my gait cycle. And it felt really good. As a midfoot striker, I felt like I got a lot out of the shoe. It was very comfortable to run in. And they have a lot of it there. They've got 35 millimeter stack height in the heel and a 30 millimeter stack height in the forefoot for a 5 millimeter offset from the heel to the toe. And just beneath that is their carbon fiber plate that sits between that compressed EVA foam and the rubberized EVA outsole foam that they have in this shoe. Very enjoyable, very lightweight. And I found it to be really responsive and fun to run in. Let's take a look now at the Carbon X2, because there's a big difference between these two. Now they have their Profly foam that they have, and they've got a ton of it here. They have substantially more than they have in the Rocket X. It's 39 millimeters in the heel and 34 millimeters in the forefoot. So they have almost as much foam in the forefoot of the Carbon X2 as they do in the heel of the Rocket X. So lots of foam underfoot. But it's very soft, very responsive. And, I felt like I got a lot of energy return through every foot strike and super smooth through my gait cycle. And a part of that is, and we can see it here, they've got a really aggressive meta rocker. And the whole shoe, they've got this extended heel flare in the back, has a real rocker look to it and feel. So consequently, no matter basically how you strike the ground, whether it's more off your heel or your midfoot or your forefoot, you still feel like you just roll through your gait cycle. And I really enjoy that. And where that came into play is when you start getting into a rhythm. It just seemed like it was easier to maintain a rhythm or a pace in the Carbon X2, even though it was a little bit heavier and maybe not as fast. For distances, I think it's a big plus. But both very enjoyable to run in. And they too, in the Carbon X2, have that carbon fiber plate that sits between the Profly foam and their rubberized EVA foam that they used on the outsole material. So let's flip them over and we'll take a look at the outsoles. You can see with the Rocket X, they've got some rubberized material that's in the high abrasion area, so around that heel and up through that forefoot off to the toe to give it some extra durability there, but not adding any really extra unneeded weight. So I think they did a really good job in how they strategically placed that outsole material. If we look at the Carbon X2, and as we flip that shoe over, you can see that it's covered from heel to toe with their rubberized EVA foam. So they don't have any additional types of rubber placed on that outsole, but that's very much like the original version of the shoe, and I found that to be pretty durable. And I have over 50 miles on the Rocket X. So as we look at these shoes together, you can kind of get a sense of the wear as we talk about them. And I have 40 plus miles so far in the Carbon X2. But you can see that both of them have been holding up really well. So I think that both of these shoes are capable of going, 400, 500 miles. So durability-wise, I think they're both pretty much on par with one another as far as that goes. Now, in terms of their performance, the Rocket X is lighter. So I think that it's just, it's a faster shoe. There's no doubt about that in my mind. And I think it could be easily used, up to that marathon level. But this is where there's a little bit of a crossover because the Carbon X2 is a long distance marathon race shoe, or even an ultra marathon race shoe, if you will. But I think you could easily run that for a marathon distance and up. Or if you want to take it on a half marathon, you could, if you wanted a little extra comfort underfoot. So I think there's a little bit of crossover there. But if I had to pick a shoe for a shorter race, it would definitely be the Rocket X. So, 5K, 10K, like I said, up to, half marathon or even marathon. With the Carbon X2, since I have both shoes, if I'm going out on longer workouts, that would be my shoe of choice because it's going to hold that comfort, I think, over the long distance. Both shoes are very enjoyable to run in. And in terms of pairing them together, I'm more likely to use the Carbon X2 to train in and the Rocket X to race in. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it for you. If you did, maybe give it a thumbs up. As always, run tall, run strong, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.